Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. Now folks, before we get into it, I do want to go ahead and apologize in advance. So all the screen recording programs that I tried to go through would not allow me to record longer than 5 minutes without costing me an arm and a leg. So we're going to have to go about this old school today. Also, a warning, this is going to be a triggering episode. We're going to be going through, of course, the Sia controversy and why it matters, but before we do, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Part of this is me going to be reading an ad from Autism Speaks that comes from 2009, which sparked an entire controversy. It ties in due to the stereotypes that you're going to see displayed throughout the movie music that she made. So I'm going to try to make this quick. I don't want to bleed this camera too dry here. So let's go ahead and get started. Now the source for the transcript of this particular ad from Autism Speaks, which is done on September the 23rd, 2009, is the Autism Self-Advocacy Network website. So let me go ahead and get that pulled up. And again, I apologize, we can't all read through this together here. Give me just a moment. Get it pulled back up. Okay. So, here's how it goes. It starts with, I am autism. I am visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you're happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails. Your money will fall into my hands and I will bankrupt you for my own self-gain. I don't sleep, so I make sure you don't either. I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, birthday party, or public park. I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, a birthday party, or public park without a struggle, without embarrassment, without pain. You have no cure for me. Your scientists don't have resources and I relish their desperation. Your neighbors are happier to pretend I don't exist, of course, until it's their child. I am autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness. I will fight to take away your hope. I will plot to rob you of your children and your dreams. I will make sure that every day you wake up you will cry wondering who will take care of my child after I die. And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared, and you should be. I am autism, you ignored me. That was a mistake. Now, the rousing chorus of this supposedly basically exalts everyone but the person with the actual diagnosis. It basically glorifies the parents and the caretakers. It turns autism into this, basically the embodiment of the boogeyman that swept in and kidnapped the real child that's laying under all the autism, and basically blaming the child having the diagnosis for every single problem that might be going on in that family. Think about it. Money, loneliness, divorce, siblings acting out. Read that and think on it. Now, when you think of that mentality, I also want you to think about the shows, the movies, the things you have seen on screen depicting people with autism. It always depicts a particular type. More often than not, it's going to show what we like to call classic Canner's autism. And it's showing a very stereotyped version at that. It is not showing the quiet moments. It's not showing when nonverbals are communicating. It's showing the screaming. It's showing the meltdowns. It's showing exaggerated movements. It's showing wide eyes. Basically, it essentially turns us back into, for lack of a better term, shit-throwing monkeys. It takes this, what you're seeing here, and reduces it to this. That's what it reduces us to. Okay? Okay? It's a fear tactic. And all the media uses it, and Hollywood uses it. Now we're going to move on. When they're not showing that, who are they showing? Even though it wasn't said or pronounced during the show, when people think of so-called high functioning, you think of the Good Doctor, right? You think of Sheldon Cooper. You have images in your head from Rain Man. First off, Rain Man, the mother of them all. The man whom the character Rain Man was based off of did not even have autism. Let me say that again. The movie that the media and Hollywood have based the ideas of autism on for over the last 30 years did not even have a diagnosis of autism. Okay? You hearing that? Okay. Now we're going to get into the Sia situation. This is an article. Let me pull it back up here. I think I might have X'd out of it here. See if I can't pull it back up. And I don't really want to read all of these. So we went through the New York Times article before, right? Here we go. This is from pastemagazine.com. Sia's music is painful, thoughtless film that uses autism as a prop. This was written by Joseph Stencher on February the 11th, 2021. When Australian pop star Sia announced she was working on a film starring non-autistic actress Maddie Ziegler as a non-verbal autistic character, the reaction against music's production was swift and fierce. Hold on, I'm getting pop-ups. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Okay, so I have to scroll back up. Many autistics and allied individuals, myself included, condemned not only the casting decision, but a myriad of other problematic elements going into the film's production. It's not just about the casting, folks. Hear us when we're talking about this movie. The casting has nothing to do with this. Temple Grandin in her biopic was played by a non-autistic actress. The difference was she was involved with the telling of her story every single step of the way. Keep that in mind. Okay. But this person was saying, but I still wanted it to be good. That sounds obvious at first. Why would I want any movie to be bad? But I'm aware that being so passionately against this film's production, out of fear of how it might cast those like myself and others around the spectrum, I had a strong bias against it. This is why I held my opinion off for so long. And so I countered this by attempting, as much as was in my power, to go into music with an open mind, viewing it holistically, and offering praise and criticism where I felt each would be due. Half an hour in, I found this much more difficult than planned. Music is a bad movie, but I wish that were all it was. I can handle its poor pacing and stiff dialogue, but even doing research and writing an essay on the film's problematic elements pre-release were not enough to prepare me for how harmful music is to autistic people. The movie starts with the grandmother caretaker of its title character dying of a stroke, leaving music, Ziegler, in care of her half-sister Zoo, Kate Hudson, who struggles with drug addiction. Zoo soon meets her neighbor Ebo, Leslie Odom Jr., who quickly bonds with her and music. There are multiple songs throughout the film, but to call it a musical feels disingenuous. Rather, these music video segments, which feel like they take up about a quarter of music's runtime, serve as intermissions between the movie's plot. The lyrics, tone, or visuals sometimes loosely connect to ongoing themes, and its actors perform in highly choreographed, colorful sequences with exaggerated facial expressions. But these sequences live entirely outside the context of the real world of the film. Instead, they are meant to convey how music views the world through these fantasy sequences. It is clear that these music videos are segments in which Sia is the most comfortable, as the first-time writer-director helmed some of her own over the years. In a vacuum, these segments have impressive choreography, and the songs are good. That's the extent of my ability to be a music critic, and I can appreciate their vibrant colors and exuberant energy, which I can see appealing to some fellow autistics. However, these segments take away from the rest of the film, killing any momentum within the story, instead of injecting emotion into it. Give that much of the rest of the film don't have any incidental music, why these songs couldn't simply have been overlaid on some scenes remains a mystery. It's also worth noting that these segments are a cocktail of sensory stimuli, which may be difficult for some autistics to process and could definitely be overwhelming for any autistic performers. Since Sia has admitted that music originally had a nonverbal autistic actor filming before Ziegler took their place, due to the filming process being overwhelming for the actor, I highly suspect these elements as the culprit. Even if these scenes were cut, however, the rest of the film fails to say anything substantial about autism, addiction, or AIDS, another subject briefly introduced and not followed up in any meaningful way. Zoo is actively neglectful of music throughout the film, as she continues to struggle with drug addiction, and arguably abusive towards her in 2 scenes we'll get to later. But by the end, the movie appears to absolve her of her mistreatment entirely. One of music's most visibly uncomfortable elements is Ziegler's lead performance. As someone with a family member who demonstrated many of music's characteristics, limited vocabulary, using an iPad to convey emotions, needs, motor or vocal ties, etc. Excuse me. It's clear to me that Ziegler studied these and others and goes for sheer imitation in her performance. They're mechanically accurate, but smaller, more subtle tics and eye movements I have come to know aren't there. The fact that Sia and the rest of the filmmakers decided that this superficial mimicry would be better than casting someone on the spectrum in some capacity rubs salt in an already open wound. But nothing wounded me as much as music's restraint scenes. These scenes have received so much controversy that Sia has actually apologized for their presence and promised to remove them from future versions of the film. But they're here now, and they hurt. In 2 instances in which music becomes overwhelmed, begins to have a breakdown, Ebo and Zoo put music on the ground and press their bodies against her as she fights back, struggling to break free. Physical pressure is proven to help people across and even off the spectrum calm down, think weighted blankets or vests, but the use of physical restraint should only be from trained individuals and as an absolute last resort. The fact that Sia is only recognizing this days before the movie's US release cements the fact that she did not listen to autistic audiences or experts throughout the film's production. The scenes themselves triggered harmful memories as an autistic kid, which made me cry, and not in a good way. If all these issues haven't convinced you not to see the film, I'm firstly astounded by your lack of empathy. But I'll stress that all these integral issues aside, this is not a good movie. Characters seem to spend half their dialogue on exposition, of course using music as an expository device to speak, but to never with. New plot points are introduced and never discussed again, and it's only attempt at humor comes in form of Ben Schwartz playing a seedy drug dealer, which falls entirely flat. At worst, music is physically painful at watch. At best, it's just boring. I've seen opinions online, both from autistic and non-autistic people, who say we should be happy to get something representing us, even if it isn't great. I reject that. Yes, I want to see more autistic, neurodiverse, and disabled people across many spectrums and more media, as both characters and creators. But I also want these stories and works to be good, and more importantly, to be true to their and our experiences. It is good that Sia is finally listening, but at this point the damage is done, and its two painful hours are preserved for posterity. I hope this movie doesn't scare others away from supporting movies by, about, and for autistic and other disabled people, but instead inspires them to do right. We want to create art that speaks to our experiences, and we want to see those experiences on screen, to process the unique pain and joy of being the way we are and knowing we're not alone. If music can get made, I don't think that's too much to ask. There's several things here to go over, and my camera's going to get angry with me here real quickly. So I'll try to make this brief. What we're going over is society as a whole has a predisposition, due to how we are displayed by the media and by Hollywood, to think of autistic people in a certain way. When you think of a collection of people in a certain way, and you find that you yourself have an autistic child, it sends many parents into this sense of melancholy and despair. That melancholy and despair can either A, end up harming the autistic child, or can end up being fatal. The things that you put on screen when you are representing a set of people matters, because it affects the people that are around the individual with the diagnosis. It can and does perpetrate otherness, and if you've ever been bullied, you know that otherness leads to abuse, bullying, ostracizing, and isolation. And all of these can be fatal. It gives the medical groups a sense that they can go ahead and experiment and torture us with all kinds of things, because by and large, the public will go along with anything if they think that it's actually going to help us be more normal and less like the horror story stereotype that Hollywood and the media are peddling. At the very worst, instead of finding sympathy with the murdered child with autism due to the media, more often the sympathy goes to the murderer, because they were overwhelmed by this tragedy that they are perpetuating. Sia's musical does the same thing. It takes someone who has autism and treats them like their story doesn't matter, uses them as a plot device in order to then elevate the neurotypical troubled sister instead. And I'm sorry, we've seen that. again and again and again. All of this promotes a culture of ableism, prejudice, abuse, and sometimes even murder. So, folks, this is why it matters. Alright, folks, I don't have anything more for you this afternoon. I do appreciate your time and your patience with me. Now, we don't get many views on this channel, and the few views we do tend to be removed by YouTube. So if you could, don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.